Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, ABC 10's Sean Cunningham. Sean,
James,
it's an emotional Tuesday. It's an emotional day.
is it?
Let's do this, Sean. Let's do this.
Let's dive in, shall we? I gotta be honest. As much as I enjoy this podcast, first of all, good to see you.
Yep, good to see you.
I was like, I think I've only had one other time when I was like, hey, can we talk anything other than the Kings? And
Yeah,
that's kind of like where we're at. Like, there's they're not fun right now.
Yeah, we could talk Niners, we could talk Raiders. We
Right.
could just completely go sideways here. I think
I've got all kinds of movie reviews and like series
there we go.
recommendations.
Yeah.
Fun,
I think
sadly.
Sean, that might have been the most disappointing thing about Sunday. I showed a picture on Twitter of my two screen TV experience, which I always have. Typically on a Sunday, I have Red Zone on one TV, and I have the standard game, which whatever the best game is of the week on either on either station on my other screen. But because it was a Kings Sunday as well, I had the Niner game rolling all the way up until Kings time, and then the Raiders game started right before, and so I had two TVs going the whole time. And to see the highest highs of both the 49ers and the Raiders, and see these just epic comebacks, these epic battles that are instant classics. I mean, really, just some really, really high quality stuff. And then to flip it over and just be like punched in the face, I think that added to sort of, certainly I think it added to my frustration and my disgust of watching the Kings play. Because like as a media member, we're supposed to be neutral. We're just supposed to cover the facts, but that doesn't mean that you don't on certain days just think, man, I am just wasting my time. And I think that that's where we've gotten, like, not all the time with this team, but certainly enough times this season where it's frustrating, Sean. This is one of those seasons where, like, I don't know that I've seen the team get to this point this early with any talent. Like, if you don't have talent, that's one thing. If you do have talent, so I don't know. Like, was Sunday? We keep talking about the low point. Was Sunday one of the lowest points? Because I don't think it was the lowest point as far as like the worst that they've played, but it might have been the lowest point for Kings fans who are also Bay Area, Northern California, Sacramento sports fans.
Before I answer that question,
yeah,
buckle up, because the Kings play Sunday at 3:00 against the Houston Rockets for the second straight time, because they have the Houston Rockets at home on Friday and then they get them again on Sunday, and the Niners are at 125. And like last night, they're like, during the Cavs game, which there might have been 10,000 people in the building. There certainly wasn't the 12,000 I think they announced.
Sean, that was 6,000, 7,000.
6?
No, I don't think I'm like, we had a game that was bad where they announced it at 15, and I heard that it was 8,200.
Right.
That came through the turnstile, and that game was way less than any game that I had seen. That was
in one of the upper sections. And in fairness, I always say that if you have a seat in the upper section, like, don't even go. Just don't go to the game. Just don't go. By all means, go to the game. Don't report to your section, unless you want to take like a crazy picture of how high up you are, because you can just stand on the concourse. You could go to the draft house if you want, but I would just stand along the concourse, because that view is just so much better, and they allow it's wide open and you can do it. So, but no, I thought, in all fairness, I was like, there's no football. There is a national championship, and Sacramento doesn't give a damn about college football. So I didn't think that was a thing, but they're running a thing literally, like, to get fan engagement and fan involvement and get them loud, show the split screen of, here's a 49ers logo, here's a Cowboys logo, which one do you like more? And then when guys are at the free throw line, they're showing the Cowboys logo to get people to boo. I thought it was creative. Good job, game night staff. But people are going to be wanting to watch that game, and I think the draft house is going to be the place to be if you have tickets to Sunday's Kings game and you decide that you actually want to go to the game to see the red hot Houston Rockets for a second straight night.
Hey, it's
but
possible by that point that the Kings could be playing the Rockets for last place in the Western Conference.
Right. Well, I think if you're the Kings, you're just hoping that just by 3:00, you just hope maybe the 49ers are just blowing out the Cowboys, or vice versa. Like that way people are actually paying attention to you, because
Are
James,
you though?
I'm gonna,
because I'm not sure that you want people paying attention to what's
maybe
happening.
you
Here.
don't. No, I mean there is an argument to be made that possibly you don't. But low point of the season, James, I would say probably not, only because, as we've said on this podcast before, and I get to quote Taylor Swift here, which is now I'm forgetting the lyric.
What only kills you makes you stronger.
No, not that one. And that's Kelly Clarkson. Come on. That's Kelly
whatever.
Clarkson. It's we've seen this film before and we didn't like the ending. It's from her Exile song. And it's look, I think as a fan, you've been disappointed by this team and maybe what lied ahead in the terms of competitive nature, the spirit and the pride that you hoped existed with the talent of this team months ago, possibly even before Luke Walton got fired. But now here you're in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. It is the longest streak of the season, but I don't think there was any moment in this season where we thought that they weren't going to lose 5 straight. I think we definitely anticipated that. So
yes,
to me, it's all, I hate to always go back to preseason predictions, but if you anticipated this team not being very good or hovering around 500, which we can't even say anymore, they're 11 games out of 500. And I think, as you pointed out last night to me, James, is like, no, I mean, like they project to be 19 games under 500 by the time the season ends. But the odd part is just the way the West is, like you're still just a handful of games in the West. Like if
I think they're a game and a half out of the 8th spot. I mean, out of the 10th spot right now.
And the separation between like where they are at 11 or 12 to what they could be at like 6, maybe even 5, it's just like a handful of games. So it's so strange. I think you're going to start to see that separation though, between, like right now it's like 1 through 4, there's the separation. 1 through 3 has a real good separation. 4 or 5, whatever.
Well, no,
like I think
Grizzlies are scaling the wall. Like they're in. They're like, hey, we got this. And then after that, you've got your Lakers, your Clippers, your Nuggets. You get some teams that should be better than they are, but well, I don't know if the Clippers should be better than they are, but yeah, it's a mess. The whole standings are a mess. And I mean, again, the Kings, I think they're 4.5 games out of last place at this point. I'm not joking. They could be in last place by Sunday.
Right. And you're closer to last place now, but I also feel like that 10 and that 7 like area, like I really feel there's going to be separation there within the next couple weeks. And you're already starting to see it. And so they're kind of that whole goal of, well, play in tournament playoffs, that's our goal. You can poke holes in that goal all you want, but if that's their goal, they're still there. So it's still in reach. And yeah, you're just hoping that Monty McNair can come in and save them from themselves, because we already know this ain't it. And
no.
And certainly this team's capable of rattling off maybe a 4-game winning streak, a 5-game winning streak, winning, possibly 7 of 10, 8 of 10 in a stretch. And if they do that, it puts them right back in. But like, it's just fool's gold. Like, even if you do that, who cares? Like, you're still a team that just toils with mediocrity. So it's not something that's sustainable. So yeah, you really need to do something, unless you're just committed to being very mediocre to very, very bad to possibly the worst team in the league, because you're 4.5 games from that. It all just depends on how you look at it. And I think right now they're setting themselves up for a real big disappointment, because I feel like, what would be worse, James, to be the worst team in the league, or to be the team that even misses out on the postseason tournament and you get 11th? Like, I think that's probably worse.
Well, I mean, I said it on D'Lo and Casey yesterday. Like, this team can't even lose, right?
Right.
Like they're not even good at losing. So I don't even, that's a problem. They always have this mentality. Oh, you know what? We're not just going to go full tank. we're going to play it out the best we can. We're going to try to get our young guys out there and do some stuff, but we're not just going to throw away games because that's bad for the culture. Like, first of all, what culture? The culture of losing is what you have, and it's like permeated this franchise forever at this point. It's absolutely atrocious to watch what's happening. And I think, Sean, like, we'll get to like I hammered the Kings on Sunday night, and I think it wasn't just strictly on that game. It was the fact that you're playing a team without Damian Lillard, without CJ McCollum, without Norman Powell. So their top 3 scorers are gone. And so that Anthony Simons is coming to play. That's what he's been doing the whole time when given an opportunity. And you gave him wide open threes the entire game. Like, just the worst defensive structure I've ever seen. So either you have like 10 of the just most boneheaded playing basketball players of all time that can't figure out something and can't make adjustments, or you have a really bad system, or you have a mixture of both somewhere along the way. But I just don't get it, Sean. You knew there's one guy. It's like it's this simple. If LeBron James is coming into town, you know that LeBron James is going to do all the damage. Like, that's where a team like Portland was. They've quit on the season completely. They don't want to be in the 10th spot. And all of a sudden, they've lucked into the 10th spot right now. They're a game and a half up on the Kings in the 10th spot. They don't want it. They want to shut down Damian Lillard for the rest of the season. They want to trade off most of their other pieces and start over fresh next season with a completely different roster. They're trying to give it up. And you walk in there and lose by, what was it, 15? And to me, that's where it came to a point where, like, we've seen this song and dance, like what you're saying, that's what I wrote on Monday, was like, we've seen this song. We've seen this. We just don't see it in game 42. And
Right.
that's the embarrassing thing, Sean. Like, that's where I came at them hard, because it's like, this is game 42. This isn't game like 75, which is what I asked Ty.
Right.
Like, why are you guys playing with no competitive fire? You're acting like it's game 75 and you're a team who's losing and just cashing it in. Like, what is going on? And I just don't think they have an answer. Like, I watched Ty walk off the court last night after Chimezie Metu got the technical foul for throwing the ball at the stanchion in like a critical moment in the 4th quarter. And he just walking off the court, shaking his head and just like, how many dumb mistakes? Like, how many times do we have to do something stupid? And like, it's brutal. So that's why I don't think I was unfair, because I'm watching this. I've seen 12 years of Sacramento Kings basketball. I can see when a team lets go. I can see when a team quits. It's not hard. When you've been there as many times as we have, as many games as you and I have both, Sean, you know when they've quit. And I watched Sunday and I just thought, my goodness, were they trying to get back to the locker room to see what's going to happen in the Raiders game? Like what's going on? Like, you guys just look like you flat out quit.
Yeah, my only thing is, I don't have a problem with the way you asked. I could just tell, and maybe it's just because I know you, I knew you were pissed. Like, I knew you were pissed. And I think that's probably the problem that I had, because again, like, and again, this is nitpicking. I'm not trying to
remain stoic.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hammer James, because look, we're in an era of journalism where, like, rules of journalism that you might remember from the 80s and Walter Cronkite days, and even before that, like that they don't exist anymore. So there really is no rules, other than you hope that people remain objective. And so whether the team wins, loses, disappointment, embarrassing, whatever, I could be laughing and jovial and having a good time in that media room. And that's kind of the vibe you're supposed to. You're almost showing that no matter what y'all do as a basketball team, you don't affect me. You don't impact me. And so not being on that Zoom, because the tough part was Sunday night, getting our show together on ABC 10, and the 3:00 games are great. The 6:00 games really are a struggle. So I wasn't able to jump in that Zoom. I probably could have, But after watching that game, I said, this is just not worth my time. In fact, the game wasn't worth my time. You
Yeah.
know, as someone who has to cover like all these different things, I was just like, it's a blessing that this game wasn't played on the home floor. It's a blessing that they're in Portland and that I can ignore this game tonight. Ignore the game from the sense of having to cover it from a post-game standpoint on a Zoom call and ask them what the hell just happened in Portland. But I could just tell that you were pissed off. And so maybe that's just the problem that I had. I'll take it a step further. You don't even know this. I didn't tell you this, last night pregame. I was out kind of watching some pregame warm-ups, talking to some people, and I saw Tais walked by me after his pregame warm-up, and I just kind of pulled him aside for a second. I was like, hey man, were you bothered by that question last night? And he knew which question I was talking about. I didn't even have to, go there. And he says, he says, no. He's like, no, of course not. If I'm bothered by that question, he basically insinuated that that just shows a fragility. He's like, no, it's a fair question. He's right. He's right. It's just their bottom line is he's right. So again, and he's also a very young guy in this league. So I wanted to kind of ask, like, where's his head out? One of the things I was going to ask some of the personnel and some of the players was like, again, I still feel the Philly game was the worst loss this season. I think we say it every podcast, but I kind of thought, I was like, should I even ask them, like, is this the worst it's been for you guys? Like, is this, because I felt like I was going to get the athlete cliche, even just pulling a guy aside and talking to him for a second, because every loss, the recent loss is the worst loss, right? That's just kind of how their most professional athletes are kind of geared and wired to think about. But last night did have a weight to it. And I think certainly it's in the conversation. It's still a road game. It's still, I think you can kind of get lost in the minutia of it all and just it's just a poor game, but it was still there. It was still there for the taking for the most part. And then it just unraveled. And yeah, man, it's something about these games where they don't have their star players and they just let down. They don't go in there with the pressure of you should win this game, and I hate saying that, but
it's almost like they just expect to win. It does. It feels like that they think that they're better than they are, and they expect to win. And I'll say this too, like I don't think my question, like, I think I was blunt, but I also think that
you were pissed, bro. You were pissed. You're like, well, you people wasted my time.
Well, no, but I'm going to say this, like, I think that being completely objective, that question had to be asked, and it had to be asked hard, because we're at that point. We're not at some point where you can sugarcoat and try to slide around it. Like, it is what it is. Like, if anything else, that might have been like one of the more like blunt, straightforward, like, I'm not gonna dance around this. I'm gonna tell you that this is what this looks like. And while I might be pissed, it's that's where we are. You've pushed me to a point where, objectively speaking, this is who I have to be moving forward. Like, I have to call you out every single game from this moment on, because that's how bad you are. And that's not how bad you should be. And I'm not saying that they should be like 8 games over 500. This team should not be this bad. They should not be 11 games under 500. That is absolutely, like, it's inexcusable. Like, at this point, you should not be this bad. And so I think from my point of view, like, this is who we have to be. This is who we have to be going forward, because if not, who's holding these guys accountable for this? Like, you're looking in the stands, we're not joking, 6,000 or 7,000 fans. Like, that's accountability. That's, who's accountable for that? The owner. The owner is feeling that the product on the floor is costing him money. Good. Feel it, because I think you're going to feel it worse, and of the, couple of thousand fans that are in there, so many of those are giving away tickets at this point. We're talking 2,000-3,000 tickets. And I saw season ticket holders having discussions on Twitter today. They're like, why am I paying $200 for a seat, and this franchise is giving away my seat for $50? they're certainly not giving me $100 back. They're not giving me $150 back for my seat. But here they are. These people are sitting next to me that paid $50 for their seat from the franchise,
Yeah.
not from a secondary ticket source. Because
Call your rep.
yeah,
Gotta call your rep.
secondary ticket sources, they're not buying these tickets. This is like a mess. And I'll say this too.
That's a situation where it's like Directv or something like that, where it's like, man, they got me in at this price. Now my price is up to this, but like no one's calling me to try to lower it. And it's like, well, no, because they have your money. they have your money.
Yeah.
They're like, they can, I mean, you would hope that a good company would call you and say, hey, you're paying too much. Why don't we try and get you over here? It's like, well, this is your programming package. So
well,
yeah, it's
like
tough.
That's a good point. DirecTV, I was at $190 a month. I switched to YouTube TV. I pay $65 a month and I never look back. Do they send me stuff in the mail? Sure, they do.
We want you back.
I throw it away. Heck yeah, I do. Yeah, you want me back? Of course you do. You want me to pay 3 times what I should be paying for the same thing that I can get somewhere else. So, and I'll say this too. This is one thing that like we did on I saw a little bit on Twitter. Someone, Christopher, like they just had a baby. Shout out to Christopher, one of our Kings Beat folks. He just had a baby and they couldn't go to a game. And he said, hey, I've got 2 tickets to the game if anyone wants to go. And then someone put into my thread, hey, like I'd really love to take my son. We only got to take him when he was 1. He's been begging us to take him. He's like 4 or 5. And someone else reached out to that guy and said, hey, I got you. I've got extra tickets on Friday and on Sunday. I'll treat you whichever game you want. That's the point where we're at, cool. I believe. I think that's where, awesome. Like, if you're a Kings fan and you're a season ticket holder, like, and you can't bear to watch or you can't sell your tickets, find a family, go on my timeline, go on wherever you want. You'll find places. Go in your neighborhood, find a family that can't afford to go to games, bite the bullet, and let someone else go. If you're just going to waste the tickets, let someone else go, because you never know, you might spark someone to become a Kings fan. You might give someone, you might brighten their day. You might like make a difference in somebody and what's happening with them, you know, brighten their mood and show a little good spirit. So that's what I would suggest, because I think that's where we're at. Like, my son still wants to go to games all the time. Sure. You know, we still show up every game. And like, for me, like, hey, there's no question whether I'm going or not. I'm going to show up, just like I'm going to sit here and watch the game while they're on the road and hop on the Zoom and ask tough questions. That's the job that we're in. And that's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. And so I'm going to keep doing it. But I think that there is a way to, like, be generous and make this into a positive a little bit for some people, especially if you can afford to, and you're just going to waste your tickets. Find someone else to go and give someone else a shot. And maybe they'll have a really good time where you won't, because it's different when you don't go to games all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say much more than that. I completely agree. I will say, though, you know, to kind of bring it back to a basketball personnel discussion, like these people who think that, you know, Monty McNair just has to do something. Like, again, I think I used the analogy. He's not just playing video games, eating pizza in his office. Like, you know, it's really difficult to make franchise altering moves. It's really difficult to make any move, you know, and it's there's a lot that goes into that. And I do think that there's this attitude around some fans, or this narrative that this guy just isn't doing anything, that he's just not trying. It's like, you know, this guy's job's on the line. Like, all these people's jobs are on the line. I think there was 2 things that stood out to me with Ty that I wanted to point out that he said post game last night, which is a game like the Cavs, where I think people would think that, oh, there was a better effort than what we saw in Portland. I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. But he would point out, no, we just made shots. And to me, I'd say, well, yes, you made shots, but on behalf of you guys not making shots in Portland and struggling to shoot like you did, because again, James, they struggled to shoot the ball. They were hovering around 30%, 35 to 40% for most of the game.
I think they were one of 13 from 3 to start the game on Sunday.
Yeah, and then Buddy gets hot, and then Ty gets hot, and you know, they end up with like 12, I think, at one point. I think they finished with maybe 14, I'm not sure. But point being is, like, yeah, you may have made shots, but your inability to make shots in Portland showed a quit among you guys. Like, oh, well, we can't hit anything. That's the difference. And so, in talking to people, it's like, it's funny, like how sometimes when people just say, well, the effort isn't there. And oftentimes that can be true. Like, I can see teams go in and still have the same effort, make shots, and win a game, right? You can have a team go in there with an effort, miss shots. The missed shots take away now the effort. And that's what we see with this team, where bad defense begats bad offense. And then here comes the sulk. Here comes the quit. Here comes where those moments where those 7-0 run becomes 14, becomes 21. That's what people are talking about. And when Ty talked about, well, in this game, we just made shots. It's like, well, no, you made shots. And as a result of making shots, it had a positive impact defensively. Look at the stops they made down the stretch. I mean,
against the Cavs?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they didn't give up. I think they held the Cavs scoreless in like almost the last 3 minutes, right?
The competitiveness was absolutely there against a team that is a complete anomaly in today's NBA.
Yeah.
And it works. It works for them. There was never a point in that game, James, before halftime, there was never a point in that game that I thought the Kings were going to win that game. There just wasn't.
Nope. No, I agree with you.
They made you a believer in the second half.
Or at least they made it competitive where you at least were having a good time watching it.
Yeah. And to the point where, I think at one point I looked over at you and I said, because the first half was really kind of dreadful, where I said, I think this team has gotten so in their head about the third quarter, all they care about is having a good third quarter and be damned the rest of the game, but it did translate to a nice competitive fourth quarter. The other thing that Tais said post game that I wanted to hit on real quick was he said it, where it's like, we have to be able to compete. We have to be able to hit shots. We have to be able to do these things, or else they're going to find people who will. And it's not just I thought it was a nice little nugget. It's almost as if somebody had talked to them. Now, I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if it was necessarily Alvin Gentry. Maybe it was Monty McNair who spoke to the team, Wes, Wilcox, Joe Dumars, maybe even Vivek. He's been known to, kind of go in there and rile the troops at times. So somehow, some way, maybe there was an interdepartment memo that went out where it's like, hey guys, maybe that moment where I've always said everyone's available, maybe they put out something saying, hey guys, we're going to do what's best for this team, and just don't be surprised to start hearing your names in conversations. So I thought he kind of opened up the curtain a little bit. I didn't think it was just a passing comment, because we've never heard anybody talk about any kind of veiled threat about their job being on the line. And I think it was refreshing to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, no one should feel safe. I mean, like, I would say like 15 or 16 of these players shouldn't like renew their lease. Like if like that many of the 17, I think there might be one, and it might be Ty, and it's the straight shooter. It's the guy that has no problems taking it on, but has also shown that he cares and he wants to be good, and he's as frustrated as anyone else. And to be honest, that question that I shot at Ty, that was coming to whoever was there. I mean, I asked the same question to Alvin, and I asked the same question to De'Aaron. I asked the same question to all three of them. And if Harrison Barnes would have been there, he would have got it. If Rashawn Holmes would have been there, he would have got it. I don't care who it was. You're getting that, because I, at this point, again, I think that's the question that you deserve to answer, that they deserve to answer, that they have to answer at this point. And so, like, I even asked Ty last night if a game like the Portland loss can actually be a driving force. I said, I know you guys lost, but the effort was way better against the Cavs. And he said, yeah, it was a slap to the face. He's like, but why we need to be slapped to the face all the time? I just don't know. He's being super honest about it, and I get it. And again, the Cavs trashed the Kings last time they played them. Like, they used their size to an advantage. I thought, number one, we could have seen a lot more of Ty against the Cavs, because he kept getting Lauri Markkanen like in space and just like abuse him. That same with Fox, same with Buddy. There was always a big man guarding the perimeter. They had no chance to stay in front of the Kings, and that's especially with Isaac Okoro out. that's a problem for the Cavs. You can't have this, spectacular perimeter defender dancing around making changes. But I think that there was also some good. And, Sean and I were talking about this before. We always do Tuesday overreactions, which I think we're there, right, Sean? It's Sean's favorite segment,
My favorite.
Tuesday overreactions with Sean Cunningham. And I think the biggest thing, I think, Sean, we have to actually hold like a small amount of like a symposium here and explain the Neemias Queta situation, because I don't like, this is not a trajectory like foosh, he's now a starter, or boom, he's going to be in the rotation from here on out. But man, Neemias Queta was fun to watch, Sean. He was fun to watch. He was fun to watch. He got his first extended look. What he played, 26 minutes, 11 points, 5 rebounds. He had at least 1 or 2 steals. He had an assist. He held his own. He ran, I think, a +8 in a game that you lost, even if you only lost by 1. He played in the final 3 minutes of the game. Like, to have a guy come up from the G League and actually play like closing minutes over Alex Len, I thought was stunning. Like, overall, like, just what are your impressions?
That dude is so big. And when it was fun, it was fun because I was just curious. I had to ask him. I was like, "Have you ever played in a game where you're going up against 3 other 7-footers?" And I felt like I should have known if he had, but he's like, "Oh no, God, like no, that's never happened."
He said, "I don't think anyone has."
Yeah, he's like, "What are they doing?"
Yeah.
No, it was really cool because he showed that he belonged, and I don't know that I would have been able to say that at any point this season. And I didn't expect him to play that much, even with this anomaly of a roster that Cleveland puts out there. And not only did he show he belonged, he was impactful. He really disrupted some of those guys. Now, granted, Jared Allen made him look foolish a ton of times. Like, there was an education, and that's fine. Like, we expect that. Like, he's not the quickest of foot. Jared Allen kind of took advantage of all the Kings bigs last night. But yeah, I mean, it was great to have him see that type of scenario. I'm really, I mean, look, if Alvin Gentry has talked about, well, I'm going to go with guys that are going to show level of compete, and this was an example of that. Alex Len was god awful last night. I mean, he was horrible. I looked at you at one point and I said, "What is he doing on the floor?"
He was like 3 of 12 from the field or something.
And just chucking.
Sean, in what universe does Alex Len take 12 shots?
You sit them all down and you're like, "No, it was Harrison Barnes we wanted to see shoot more, not Alex Len."
Yeah. And Sean, like, I mean, I'm going to segue. I'm not going to segue. I'm going to bring up a tangent here. Is it just me, or do the Kings not understand that there's a reason why Alex Len is allowed to shoot 12 times? There's a reason why Chimezie Metu is allowed to shoot 10 times. There's a reason why Davion Mitchell is shooting 10, 11, 12 times a game. It's because the opposition wants those players to shoot the ball and not the other Kings players.
But it's also, James, it's something I talked about last year. The audacity that Terrence Davis could come in mid-season and lead your team in shooting and shooting attempts. Like, I'm like, why does this guy come in and take the shots that these guys won't? I mean, you're right. The defense does want them to take those shots. I get that. But it's also like, we're watching Harrison Barnes pass these shots all the time. And like, there was a moment where last night I said, this is an example of being unselfish to a point. Like, their unselfishness of trying to get other guys involved. They're like, no, we want Harrison, take the ball, penetrate, drive, get to the free throw line, do what you're going to do. And he finally chucks a 3 and he nails it. It's like, it circled around so many times, finally comes back after a second opportunity. And it's like, and I don't know, like there's just something within these guys where they're just trying to be the unselfish player, but not realizing that, no, at the end of the day, you need to take 12 to 15 shots a game, not Alex Len.
Well, that, and like Harrison Barnes, he had a moment in the second quarter. He went to the free throw line 4 separate occasions in 1:11. So he had 8 free throws. He went 6 of 8, but that's it. He finished 6 of 8. Like, where was that aggression? Again, why didn't you go continue to do that? Because every time you get fouled, that means that there's one more team foul. Like, you're getting a team in foul trouble. You're getting big men in foul trouble. That team was lean beyond the big gigantic 3 that they put out there. And so again, I just think that the lack of like being in the moment and understanding the concept of what's happening and how to be successful, just like the inability to embrace success even within games, within quarters, within moments. Like, they don't have an ability to do it, and I don't know what makes his team so fragile compared to others. So let's get back to Nemi. So the good people of Portugal. This is the good people of Portugal. I love you, first and foremost. You guys are amazing. My Twitter feed has been nothing but pandemonium for the last like 24 hours. It's fun to watch. I'm all in on you guys enjoying this and fully taking this in, which you should be celebrating. Your guy, the first player from Portugal in the history of the NBA, just had his first real run, his first basket, everything. It was amazing. Super excited for you. You have to understand, though, that this is the NBA, and what Nemi got was a taste of what he needs to do to get better. And there's going to be a time where he goes right back to the G League and he starts putting up 20 something points. But what you're going to see is Nemi is going to go from here at the G League level to here at the G League level. And he's going to take this monumental jump because he just figured out what it looks like and what it feels like at the next level. And he will be the first to tell you, I need to step it up. I need to be more athletic. I need to be more agile. I need to be more forceful. I think the fun thing that we saw, Sean, was that there was a point when he started to get comfortable and he started trying to catch a body. And it was like, oh, he's trying to make posters. And that was just the confidence level just kept rising. But like, just the overall play, I think he had the one pick and roll play. First of all, I thought he was brilliant on defense, even if he gave up a couple of buckets.
He was very effective defensively, especially for a team that has an inability to defend the pick and roll. Like, he clogged the lane. It was great.
How a G leaguer can come up, a guy with no games played really in the NBA, who's got like 8 minutes combined before that, can step on the court and look better than any of their other bigs in the defensive sets instantly. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you there. That doesn't make any sense, but clearly he looked like he had more understanding of the defensive schemes. He said better picks than anyone that we've seen all season long with the Kings. He knows how to move.
Some absolutely flattened some people. Poor Kevin Love got absolutely annihilated.
But he needed to do that to Kevin Love because Kevin Love on the other end had just punked them. And you needed to see that. Like, lace somebody out. That's fine with me. Like, show that you're tough. Show that you want to be there. And so I thought that the tip out on the pick and roll was amazing. And then the other things that I don't think people always notice, he put a body on a man every single time when the ball went up for the opposition, and he screened out a huge portion of the court and allowed his teammates to come in and get one rebound after another because he was blocking out his man and others because he's a huge man. And I thought that was the other thing. He really was impactful. Although he only had 5 rebounds, he was incredibly impactful as a rebounder because he cleared out the lane for everyone else to just go in and get easy ones.
The thing I want to see going forward, though, because every time you talk to him, it's just basketball. Like, he doesn't get, but the point of him saying it's just basketball is like, yes, Nemi, it is just basketball. And unfortunately, your teammates, there's a significant amount of your teammates that don't understand that. Like, they take something very simple and they complicate the shit out of it. And you don't. You don't. And
he doesn't, and Ty doesn't. Yes.
I mean, these are the guys that absolutely get it. Mo Harkless, to a degree, is kind of on that same rope where he understands that my movement here impacts the movement over here. And anything I do on the floor here impacts what goes on over on this side. And it's this understanding. It comes with being a vet in the league, which these two people aren't, but Mo Harkless is. Mo isn't the most talented guy in the world, so we obviously know his shortcomings. But the fact that there's an understanding of good basketball, look, I would put Tristan Thompson in that group. They understand what good basketball looks like. Now, sometimes you can't go out and execute it, but your shortcomings paired with these other players that don't understand what good basketball is just leaves you with a heap of crap. And that's what it ends up coming out as. And that's what's so refreshing about a guy like Nemi, who has had a good stretch in college. And he showed an understanding. He shows that he's a very intelligent, high basketball IQ person.
I agree.
That's what just leaps off the page. He understands spacing. He understands that he's so damn big that he needs to impose people. And look, it wasn't Alvin Gentry's 100% right. The dude is incredibly raw, even still.
Mm-hmm.
But even the littlest things that he did impacted his team in a positive way. And we just haven't seen a lot of that. And so it jumped off the page last night. I don't think they should shy away from using him again. Honestly, at this point, and I know this could be the overreaction that we're looking for on Tuesday, and I'm playing the part. I'm definitely playing the part because usually I'm saying, settle down, people, calm down. I want to see more Neemias Queta. I really do. I actually do want to see more. Like
not?
Again, I know you signed Alex Len, and I know you traded for Tristan Thompson. I was critical of both those moves, but now that we've seen what this ride the hot hand, so to speak, see what it translates to a team like LA, who's even a little bit smaller, right? We know this. I'm not saying play him 26 minutes, but some of those things he impacted, especially with the possibility of having Richaun Holmes back, Rashawn's probably not going to be ready to go.
No.
Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But see, I think you have enough equity within the game for what he brings to the table to put him out there for about 8 minutes, an 8-minute stretch, and say, is this going to be positive or negative? If he gets embarrassed, it's a quick hook. Get him out of there. Again, he got his food handed to him by Jared Allen. Jared Allen was just not the matchup for him. He just, but he learned from it. And he understood that, okay, this guy's 100 times more quicker than I am. He just went right around me. That's fine. Throw Marvin on him. Throw whatever you're going to do, however you're going to do it, you adjust. But his presence alone, and I used to harp on this last year with Hassan Whiteside. Like, Hassan Whiteside is what he is. But his impact in the game, much like when they talk about, oh, Buddy Hield, if he's not making his shots, even his presence alone is that decoy. Hassan Whiteside standing in that lane is like, okay, well, we can't get points in the paint. What have they tried to do over these past 2 games, James? They've changed their defensive scheme to pack the paint. Be damn what's going on at the 3-point line. And with the Cavaliers, it's the perfect team to do so because they have 3 7-footers. Granted, Kevin Love looked like Kevin Love of old and was just draining threes. But against these teams, that's what they've done. They've given up so much points in the paint. It's been such an emphasis that these past 2 games with Portland and Cleveland, it's a tough situation to do with no practice time. And they're like, all right, we're going to pack the paint. We're going to pack the paint. Who packs the paint better than Neemias? That big body. So when you got the Lakers coming in on Wednesday, stay the course. Do the same thing. Again, it doesn't have to be 26 minutes, but I do feel he's going to impact the game positively. And if Gentry's going to go to guys that not only impact the game positively, but hey, I don't care about the name on the back of the jersey, then he has to play. And ordinarily I would never say that because guys coming from the G League just aren't ready. That, and Neemias is not ready, but he does impact this small enough space of what they're trying to do that does have a positive impact on the game that I feel like you can do it. And to me, you can't roll the dice with Alex Len and hope that he's on one night or hope that he's going to be that guy one night. It just feels like you're just kicking the can down the road is all you're doing.
Yeah, I hear you, kicking the can down the road. And I'll say this too. Every time that Neemias gets in a 2-man game, he sets a monster screen, but then he does something else that I think is completely lacking. He explodes to the rim on the roll. He wants the ball every time. He's not getting it, but he wants it every time. And the fact is, when you hit the gas and run at the rim, it draws the defense in and it clears the space for the guard. That's why you're supposed to roll hard to the rim. And I think right away we saw it. Like, he's rolling hard. is he, again, the fleetest of foot? No. But he's got soft hands. He's got all kinds of finish moves around the rim. He's athletic enough that he is ready to, make a couple of posters. But I really think that he's got all kinds of skills. We're just seeing like the tip of the iceberg. So I think we're going to see him play in maybe this coming game because, again, Rashawn Holmes has cleared health and safety. So in case we weren't clear about that, he cleared health and safety on Tuesday, but he's doubtful against the Lakers. And that's because he needs to go into reconditioning. And you got to remember that he had just got back off the eye injury and wasn't even ready to go like conditioning wise from that. So now we're looking at like almost a month that he's barely played at all. He's going to take a little bit of time to like get in game shape and get ready to play, which I think is something that, we've got to keep an eye on. But, Damian Jones is still out. And, Tristan Thompson has some sort of leg injury that magically appeared. And so I think that there's a possibility here that Nemi will get to play at least one more game and potentially more, especially with the trade deadline coming up. If the trade deadline comes and goes and Tristan Thompson's still on the roster, I don't see, like, if you're not going to be a winning team, Tristan Thompson won't be on the roster very long.
Right.
Like that, he's a huge buyout candidate for this team. Like if they don't make a move around the trade deadline, I would not expect him to make it to, what is it, March 1st? He's got to be done by, because there's no reason. You've got Damian Jones, you've got Neemias, you've got Alex, you've got Rashawn. There's a lot of bigs on this team, and there's no reason to carry them forward, especially if you don't think that you're going to have any shot at the playoffs, which who knows what this team is going to be like. Okay. We've gone through most of our content for the day, which brings us to the business of basketball.
This
Sean,
is my favorite section.
This is Sean's favorite. Yeah. We were discussing it. Like, again, you've covered, parts of 20 seasons. I've covered I've covered the last 12. What is the most disappointing season that you've ever seen in Sacramento?
God, that's so hard.
I think we've talked about the worst season, but like the most disappointing. Like we talked about this once before. Like I can't count my first season or my second season as the most disappointing season because the Kings literally had the lowest payroll in the NBA. They had such a minuscule pay. They had a $58 million payroll. Now the payroll's at $130 million. And
how much also was it that it was kind of a new experience for you to where you're not looking at the season as in focus like you do now?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably part of it. Like, I'll tell you this. I remember I was sitting courtside with Paul Westphal. It was just he and I, and the Kings were facing the Utah Jazz. I think it's my first season. And the Jazz had just had the situation where Darren Williams like blew up the team behind the scenes. He blew up everything. And I think they had just traded him and got hardly anything back in return. And Jerry Sloan was standing there on the other sidelines. And again, it was in pregame. And I said to Paul, I'm like, man, you have to feel a little bit bad for Jerry that, was one of his last seasons here in the league. Clearly, he left at the end of that season or like a week later. I don't even think he finished that season. He said, I said, you got to feel bad for Jerry that he's kind of going out this way. And he goes, have you looked at my roster? And I stopped. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. He's like, yeah, man, half my roster is undrafted and second round picks, like half or more. We're going to have to sign a player just to get to the minimum. Like that's where they were. And I hadn't thought about it. So you're right. I think you're right. I was a little just bright eyed watching everything that was happening. So I wouldn't consider a season like that the most disappointing because, it's DeMarcus Cousins' first season. It's Tyreek Evans' second season. The team is in flux. They're trying to figure things out, but they do a full blown like relocation attempt where they try to move the team to Anaheim. I mean, you didn't have time to really worry whether the basketball was good or not. It was a whirlwind season. But Sean, what is your worst? Well, your most disappointed.
The most disappointing one. I mean, it's kind of a tie, and I don't think I realized it. It shouldn't be the most disappointing now, but in the moment, it felt like the most disappointing. And it was the 03-04 season. And it's the season when Chris Webber came back. Some will argue he disrupted everything. Coming back the injury, they had 55 games won that year. And they lose in the conference semis 4-3 to the Timberwolves in Minnesota. And I remember that shot he put up, being in Minnesota, seeing that shot he threw up that rimmed out. Like had he hit that shot, that would have been a game changer. And it was just tough. Like there was a clunkiness to when he came back. And then, in the 04-05 season, we all know what happened. They lose in the Supersonics. They traded him. But it's a team that won 50 games that year. And it's just, there was definitely a different feeling around there. But looking back on it, I just remember how disappointed I was that the team who won 55 games was out, and they went out this way. And the Timberwolves took it. I mean, they win the first round. They beat the Mavs 4-1. And, maybe it's because the Mavs were at the end of their rope. It wasn't what things had been. Things were going to be changing with them. Dirk was certainly coming into his own, but like Webber was really good in that. I thought Webber was really good in that series and decent in the Timberwolves series. But it just wasn't the same. The magic that they may have had in the regular season just wasn't there. So I thought, everyone thought, I think him coming back, I don't think they realized at the time how serious that knee was, what microfracture surgery is like for a player like him. And yeah, he took forever to come back, and I don't think they realized it at the time. So I feel like in the moment that was probably the worst season, but I think the most disappointed, like I never felt like any of the teams that DeMarcus Cousins was on were playoff teams until that first season under Yeager, when they were chasing the Grizzlies. And that, to me, the year they traded DeMarcus, when they were within, I think, 2 games of the Grizzlies at that point for 8, when they traded DeMarcus, like it was just like, okay, not only did they give up on the season at that point, they traded an all-star, and I didn't feel they got enough at the time. So that to me felt like a very underwhelming season, just because everything that they were gearing up for, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see this finally make this playoff run and see what they could do. And they aborted it. And I think it would have been a fun series, fun season to see finish out. I would have liked to see how those final games turned out.
Okay. So all of those seem, and I'm going to throw a couple of things in. Number one, May 8th, 2003 is a day that Webber takes a bad step and blows out his knee.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting in a hospital bed. My wife had just given birth to our first son, who was born on 2003. So
I hope you never let him forget that.
Yeah.
You just go to your kid. You're just like,
yeah. So Toby was born the day that Chris Webber blew out his knee and had to be carted off the court, helped off the court with what was it, Gerald Wallace on his side.
Yeah.
So number 2, you talked about the biggest disappointment of a team. I'll say this: my biggest disappointing moment over my entire time of covering this team is the Sunday when they fired Michael Malone. Like, it was just the biggest disappointing moment. That was, I mean, it set in motion some of the darkest times, and a run. Like, it wasn't a short dark time. It was, 18 months of dark time. That was the single greatest moment. But Sean, I'm going to be honest with you. This season,
stop.
No, it is.
Why?
It's the most disappointed that I've been with the team, because they can be bad, but they should not be this bad.
Says who?
Says the talent on the floor.
What talent?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, like, last season.
Is there an all-star, James? Is there an all-star on this team?
It's basically the same exact team from last season.
Right.
Except for you added some depth all around them. It's a better roster. Last season's roster won 33 games by, like, if you do the math, 35 games. If you did the math, this team will be lucky to win 30 games. They're going to be lucky. I mean, we've been in this situation, 19 games under 500. I don't know what that is, but they're going to be lucky. What are they pacing for right now? What are they at? Their win percentage is like 37%. 0.37 times 82. Yeah, they're on pace for 30.3 games. I've covered sub 30 point win games, win seasons, but like there should not be a reason for this team to be this bad. And it's so early that I think when you see a team quit this early, that's when I got a problem. And I know you're smiling. You're
I
thinking,
am. I feel like a
no,
Kool-Aid smile right now. Like I feel like I'm a bust through a wall. Like, oh
no,
yeah.
I'm not. I'm not just. I honestly believe that. I think that this season, the fact that they haven't done anything to improve the roster in a year and a half yet.
Yet.
No, I got it yet, but like you had an off season, you had a trade deadline last year where you went out and you did like minor moves that did improve the roster, but they improved a horrific roster to make it like slightly better, but still not good enough. And so I don't know. Like to be honest with you, I expected Fox to be better this season. Halliburton has been better, but he's only been like this much better, not this much better, and he should be way better. I think that Rashawn Holmes missing like a huge chunk of the season has been a big disappointment. I think that the play of Harrison Barnes, what he showed in the first week of the season, 2 weeks of the season, you didn't need that, but what you can't have is what we see now, like half the game's a disappearing act. And I just think if you look at the team as a whole, the fact that Buddy Hield is still on the roster is a disappointment. And that's not just me saying like, oh, no, I mean, Buddy Hield asked for a trade. The Kings tried to trade him. They still haven't traded him. Like we're getting to a point where games don't matter and it's the first 2 weeks of January. And that is a 25 win season, like in the past. And that's what this could turn into, because if you're pacing right now to win 30 games and we haven't even got to the final 20 games of the season where you realize how bad you are and you have to cash it in and you stop trying to win, now we could get to 27, 26 wins. And again, the talent, it's $130 million roster. You can't win if you can't just go out and win 25 to 30 games with a $130 million roster.
But is it? You know what I mean? Like it's a $130 million roster, but
Is it? Yeah. I mean, I get that. I get that. And you're going to shave a bunch off of that number next year when Marvin's gone and Tristan Thompson's gone, and maybe some of these other players will be gone. I don't know. But like just on paper, like the way that this season was supposed to play out, we're looking at the 2014-15 season all over again.
They finally broke James.
They broke me.
They broke you, bro. We need to get James a vacation. Go away. You can even take a month off, a week off.
It's a bad team, man. It is.
It is a bad team, but I don't. Yeah. I want to like shaken baby syndrome you right now. Like that's why you shouldn't be disappointed. They're a bad team. But disappointment should be like, I had high expectations and boy, you were terrible. You fell short. You fell flat. Like you're blaming them for being exactly who we thought they were.
No,
we didn't think it would be this bad.
I thought 35 was the minimum, but the chance to go to like 500 was there.
It sure was. I agree.
It should have been there. Like the chance.
I don't know about should. It could. It could have. It could have.
If you're able to win the equivalent of 35 games last season with the roster that you had, with literally like 6 players walking into the season, with guys like Jabari Parker and, again, you didn't, and Hassan Whiteside and Nemanja Bjelica, and then like 6 dudes who were either second round picks or undrafted, Justin James and Daquan Jeffries. Like if you could win 35 games with that roster, and then you add the pieces that they added at the deadline and brought back through free agency, and with another draft pick, and with Tyrese Halliburton having another year, like there should have been building off of 25-7 for Fox. And that doesn't mean he's got to go 27-10. It means that he should be able to do 25-7 every night because he knows that he can do it for a season. Now he needs to show you that it's not like this to get to 25-7. It's a steady, that's who you're getting. That's not what we've seen. That's, we haven't seen what we thought we would see, this huge step forward from Halliburton. We haven't seen, again, he's averaging 13 points a game. Like that's not where I would have projected that this team would have been. And I don't think we're asking too much that if you make some of the improvements that you made, and they are improvements, the roster's deeper. There's no question in my mind that it's deeper than it was last year. And
Sort
you
of, sort of.
can't pick up 5 or 6 more wins. Like that's not asking that much. And so like if you're pacing for probably 8 to 10 wins less than you should have had, that's a huge disappointment. Because most of the other seasons, Sean, we knew how bad they were. We knew
I,
like
I would argue the same. Like, to me, this
yeah,
still feels like a bad basketball team. Like, yeah, I said at best they're 500. Well, they're not.
no.
They're not. They're still a ways from it. So yeah, there is disappointment. I'm with you there, James, because they're a bad team can still be a excuse me can still be a worse team, and there are things that come into play. But through 42 games now, I don't feel like this team is drastically different than what I thought they'd be, because again, like you keep talking about depth, they're deep at certain positions, but it's not quality depth. You don't have quality depth on this roster. You just have people who play the position. Like, hey, I need a 7-footer. Do you? I mean,
You got 5 of them.
you could
Well,
have, I
not
mean,
5 7-footers, but 5 centers.
the difference is the Cavs have 3 7-footers who can freaking play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Kings don't have that. They don't, like, they
No, I
have
got
guys
you.
that it's patchwork. So it's like, again, you just manage the expectations. To me, it's a double down on what they did last year. Again, a team that wasn't very good. They showed that, oh, all of a sudden we addressed some of our toughness, physicality, sure. And then you traded one of those guys who was probably the best at it for a guy who, in DeLon Wright, you traded him.
Yeah.
And you made the Atlanta Hawks better. Not to say that he was like, that was like your, again, that didn't derail your team, but it was, I don't see where people think you do have a talented group of players. You don't have a talented team by any stretch of
I
the
agree.
imagination.
I agree. The pieces are greater than the sum of the whole or whatever it is. Like the players should be better than they are playing together. And
Yeah.
and I don't know how else to say that. They just, to me, like even moderate expectations should not have been this low.
You have to save them from yourselves, because again, what you're doing is in a lot of ways devaluing them. Like you're showing that some of these people have paper hearts, that they don't have a
Yeah.
competitive fire. Some of them don't even maybe like the game of basketball, which is, you're just maybe kind of good at it. And a lot of them just are playing positions that they shouldn't be playing. Like, you're forced to be doing something that a good team wouldn't have you do, but you have to have them do it by necessity. So it sucks. Like, again, like, I get the disappointment. There's things that you can't account for. I thought they'd be a more competitive team, a more prideful team. And they show spurts, they just don't show it consistently enough. Again, things they can control. They can control to run fast, and they don't. And that's
You're stacking up all the disappointments, man.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. They're the worst defensive team. They're not the worst defensive team, but even like that, like the Alvin Gentry era, like this team it's horrible. They were number 8 in offensive rating during the Luke Walton era here of this season. They're now 21st in the NBA. They're a bad offensive team.
Yeah.
They've been one of the slowest teams in the league in pace over the last like 20 games. Like,
and it's one thing to be bad defensively, like, we get that. But the one thing you've shown the ability to do is score the basketball. So do it. Like, and to be at a team where you're struggling to get 100 every night, that's insane to me. That is insanity,
Yeah. I mean, it's an Alvin Gentry team that can't score 100 points. So
which
that's what
is
I mean.
crazy. Yeah.
There's just, to me, there are so many things that make this disappointing. I think that coming into the first year of Walton, when the Kings had 39 wins under Yeager, and there was like, man, there's some excitement coming into the next season. That was disappointing, just the way that, but you saw it really quick that, oh man, that was smoke and mirrors. that Dave did a really, really
Really good
good
job.
coaching
Yeah, man.
job.
He's a really good coach.
Yeah, that was all smoke and mirrors, and reminds me I need to check in with our friend Dave,
With
and
Yags.
see how he's doing, in his battle. All right, Sean. So a couple of things. Let's do some business. Number one, thank you to everyone who came out for the King's Beat Happy Hour. I don't know about you guys, but I think it was a good time. And it went way long.
I felt
Sean,
like the designated driver, by the way,
yeah,
because I could not
it,
imbibe.
Sean, it was 2 hours and 45 minutes long.
It didn't
Like,
feel that way. It didn't to me. But it was a lot of fun. It was cool to see the faces of the people who want to listen to the garbage that we talk every week, and it is cool because that was especially, I think, like kind of like a therapy session for some people, and it was kind of fun. It was
yeah, I
like
think so too.
it was a good break in this monotonous of season.
Yeah, and I think the questions were great. I think it was really cool. We had like well over 60 people in the chat, like for most of the night. I know Amick at one point even said, "Wow, like no one has left." We're at like 58 people. If anyone had left, it was like 2 or 3 people who clearly had other things to do, and that's fine. But I think we're gonna keep doing those just so everyone knows. That is like the biggest thing that we can offer as a premium add-on. Without just locking random content for no reason. And so I think it makes a ton of sense to do that as like a really cool add-on for being a premium subscriber to the King's Beat. And next month we'll do the same thing, and we'll bring in another guest. I thought Amick was great. Some amazing stories, just the way he came up in the league and how things have changed so much. I think all of that stuff was just incredible content. We gave you some top secret stuff that we do on the happy hour because James has been drinking, and if Sean's been drinking, and Sam is like, yeah, I got to watch what I do on those happy hours. So I think like you got some cool insight into some of the crazy things that we've seen and that we know. So again, become a premium subscriber to the King's Beat in order to get that. We're gonna do the first week of March, just like I think we did this week. Of February, just like we did this month. But we're gonna have to be cautious about trade deadline because I think this is going to be a little crazy. So we're gonna make
it should be.
Yeah, it should be for sure. And then outside of that, we're in this time where I know everyone Scott Moak missed time in health and safety protocols. Our friend Gary Gerald has missed time in health and safety protocols. Both of those are doing great. But I'm gonna throw a shout out to our friend Scott Freshour, who is not out due to health and safety protocols. He's had a tragic event in the family. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But send a lot of well wishes to Scott Freshour. He's an incredible MC who's done stuff for the NBA now for years because he's one of the best in the business. He's a very, very good dude. And he's going through a tough time. So big love go out to Scott Freshour. Do you have any final thoughts there, Sean?
No, I mean, you hit it right on the nose, and I would say even take it a step further. Shout out to the people that are, filling the roles that some of those people had left behind. I mean, I think they did a pretty incredible job. There wasn't it wasn't what you were used to, but it wasn't clunky, and it didn't the wheels didn't fall off the wagon, so to speak, for a lot of the things that that could have when you're accustomed to either hearing on the radio, seeing in a broadcast, seeing in your game night experience. I think a lot of those kind of kept on going, and it was a little bit different, but it worked also. So kudos to those people stepping in and filling in.
The show must go on, Sean.
As they say. That's right.
Yeah, the show must go on. All right. Well, again, thanks for tuning into the King's Beat podcast. It's been a wild run, and hopefully we see better basketball, and hopefully the Kings can snap their 5-game losing streak.
And hopefully we can see some guys get out of town.
Yeah,
new blood.
Some one-way tickets out. That would be nice to see. So we got a game on Wednesday, and we'll be back on Thursday for another episode of the Kings Beat podcast. So for Sean Cunningham, I am James Ham. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you very soon.